So I just mentioned yesterday about when you're writing an essay for school, you kind of learn sometimes you put yourself into the situation. I realised that when Holy Christian and proper Christian order came around after Muhammad, I imagine, the Vatican found themselves, as I said in the video, very stressed and very bothered, and found it very difficult to exist with the Lord and Jesus, through this Christ and that's Lord. Found it very difficult because they'd been wrong for a very long time about their methods. And they found it very difficult to exist. They're probably very tormented and skits, and so they started looking into ways of practicing to please the Lord. And this is why you see them in their gorgeous gown and their silly hats and doing really weird and silly things. It's interesting that they commit their lives now to trying to please the Lord, who they've offended in every way. They crucified and destroyed his family, murdered and persecuted his family, his apostles, stole his church, stole his orrery, stole everything, married him to some woman and fornicated with her until the sun disappeared from the sky for 500 years. I've done this all before, by the way. There's nothing new. So they spend their entire day, all their time, trying to please the Lord because it's so impossible or difficult for them to please the Lord, where it's not difficult or impossible for you to please the Lord. So it's interesting the way the Vatican call themselves the Pontiff of Christianity, or the high and holy source or fount of Christianity, when they're not even liked by Christ, and they'd make desperate efforts to please Christ at all times because they're so in the red with Christ. You know what I mean? They're so under with Christ, which is strange then, because if you're just a normal person like myself, and you're a Christian, well, Christ is in waters and everywhere, really, the Lord, good Lord. But you learn to play ukulele and you sing a nice little Hallelujah by by Leonard Cohen or something like this. You're very pleasing to the Lord if you're a good neighbour. If you just certain premises you need to maintain. You're a good neighbour, a humble student, kind and caring family member. It's very easy to please the Lord. It's very, if your Decalogue, and all the things that I was doing basically in life was trying to please the Lord. Happily, celibacy and all these kind of efforts that I was making, constant, jihad. Well, it wasn't jihad actually. It was Ramadan. Happy in Ramadan. So it's very easy for me to be pleasing to Jesus, and it's very difficult for Pope Francis to be pleasing to Jesus, because he has to wear some silly gorgeous robe and some silly pontiff hat, and he has to do all these things just to be barely tolerable to the Lord, barely tolerable to Christ, where Christ probably loves everyone that didn't murder him. I know Christ has a big thing for Ireland, and I'm sure he himself personally, or apostles or friends or family, had to flee the persecution of Rome and all the gypsies around the Middle East. And I'm fairly certain they were somewhat immortal and got out all the way out to Ireland, where they were welcomed. This is where the whole thing about Céad Míle Fáilte welcomes, because we were very lucky to have welcomed this person and not give them trouble, where it's very easy to exploit them, or the opportunity to exploit them and give them a lot of hassle. So even in to say, what would Jesus do? Jesus didn't do this and exploit John the Baptist. He wasn't a gypsy, and Ireland did this and was very blessed. You're losing that now. I've already said this in other videos, Ireland, because you've forgotten it, and now you're harming such people in the same scenario, abstracted. But anyway, I'm going to I already destroyed Ireland. Don't worry about that. They're not gonna, it's just because I'm fed and I'm clothed and I'm still living here, and I'm not. Well, I am suffering here. They'll suffer my absenteeism fairly shortly now. I'll be moving to Russia. So this is the point I was making. It's still strange that they call themselves the pontiffs and centre point of Christianity, when they're not even liked or even barely tolerable to Christ. They're the Christ killers, and they took control of Christianity, and through methods and semblance, not through genuine authenticity and devotions. They've probably forgotten this, and they have very silly, devoted, like Brazilian men in the church, and have no idea what they're doing whatsoever, high and holy. Your child is more pleasing to Christ than going to school and learning to sing and laugh and be friendly and share his toys than Pope Francis could ever be. So the question is why do you respect, or why do you even pay? I don't know if you pay or something for the church. It's still my holy fortune, so that's where I reckon if you want to know where the Vatican get their money is from robbing angels and ripping off angels and killing Christ and robbing Christ for holy fortune as well. Christ wasn't tempted in regards with the holy fortune. That's one thing that made him immortal and super immortally wealthy, because he was tempted with the holy fortune of John the Baptist. And like most people, like, yeah, money, modelling contract, get in there. Jesus was like, no, John's my friend. We went to help John instead. Shabbat John, Shabbat Shalom. So he's a good man, he's very neighbourly, he's very nice. He's a bit of a break the mould. Mr. Christ was. It was a tough mould to break at the time. He was blatantly punished for not conspiring with them, but for Pontius Pilate, and Pontius like, I have nothing wrong with this kid. He's a well-brought, well-to-do, well-connected, intelligent young man. It's like, very difficult to bring anything against him. He's like, why are you trying to bring something against him anyway? And they're like, well, it's hard to explain. It's like gypsies and Babylon and mind control, and he's corrupting the youth, and he's it's completely backwards. Like, they coveting his temple in Ozori. He was about to bring justice, just and holy order to the temple. They all became desperate devils, merchants in the temple, coveting it, and they just wanted to snuff him and wipe him out. I had this problem. And it's just snuff him and wipe him out. Even so, he didn't die. Here, I got some door here. Just give me 1 second. I'm loving slating the Vatican. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's a lot. Good day. See you. So it's weird that they are recognised as some important figures of Christianity, the Vatican, these gypsies that murdered Christ. When they're bound in slavery and redemption and forgiveness and servitude to Christ for what they did to him and his friends and family, it doesn't make them special. It's because it's their full-time job, and they spend all their days committed to appeasing Christ. Doesn't mean that Christ even likes them. They're just trying to bear it. They just made it their full-time job, where all you have to do is, like, be friendly to your neighbour, treat everybody like, they could be the Christian King Lord, because they kind of are. It's in everybody. And you have to treat everybody like you'd be treating Christ. So it's weird. So it's like, why do you think they're important? Why do they think they're important? They're just desperate, you know what I mean? I'd put them in jails and let them, be so committed to Christ, and in their jail cells, Francis. That's where I put you, Christ killer. You're just doing time, and it's like, a very slow yielding community service, and you got a lot of blood to pay for, Frankie. And we got a lot of blood, a lot of innocent and very important, special Josephine people, friends and family. Allah Akbar. Frankie and your church. Church of the Antichrist. Church of the Christ killers. So yeah, you can be pleasing to Jesus much more easily than Francis can ever be pleasing to Jesus. And then it begs the questions like, why do you have somebody who's unpleasing to Christ then as the pontiff of Christianity? Well, your ma is probably a lot more pleasing to Christ for raising you and giving you a dinner every day than Francis could, with all the fucking Gideon's gospels and all soup and oblations that he gives to the world. So yeah, more crappy, redundant, pointless, pseudoistic church exploiting Jesus. No, Jesus ought not to be forgotten. 100,000 million% must be loved, appreciated. The truth must be told about him, must be recognised, must be appreciated. Absolute hero, absolute fearless, bodiless. So cool, God took him off the face of the earth. You know what I mean? I was like, I never obviously reached as cool as I think that almost happened once. Almost got there, but it was like God actually had to like come down and take him. I was like, oh, you're coming with me, you're so fucking badass. And he was an absolute rebel. So you know the way you got a lot of like New Rayers and Americans thinking like, oh Jesus, all Christianity is so ephemeral and nobody knows what he is, and like, is he even that special? Yes, he is. He was fucking kick ass. He was absolutely a badass rebel, fearless badass rebel. And he knew what was ahead of him where it comes to torturing kids or even killing kids for being intelligent, killing people for speaking out. Crucifixion was a very regular event back then. Very, very regular event to be occurring. You see this in Life of Brian. It's like, crucifixion. He knew exactly what he was facing, and he didn't stop. He didn't care. No. And you chicken shits. Yeah, so he's badass right, badass Cairo, badass rebel man, absolute badass, a bit of a posh boy. Hung around with all the hippies and weirdos and freaks that people call lepers and wouldn't associate with, and nothing happened to him when he was hanging out with all these lepers. Like, it's very much like coronavirus, you know, these are all afraid of each other, and that was the problem. Or if you're all like Christ and didn't care about each other, you would have disappeared. You've been reconnected with Jesus. Nobody told that to you, but they understood it, right? And they kept you all locked in fear for years. And that was the very problem of the situation. They kept you locked in fear and paranoid and doubt of your neighbour. Yes, I can fix everything. You know, I fix famine and war ahead, because you used to have 7 years of famine and war ahead. Pestilence, schizo, famine, not famine, the nutrition and the food. All the global catastrophes you've seen in the last 1 year, over last year. Great birth pangs. Yeah, I can fix all this very easily, you know. But you know, the Vatican don't want me to. Oh, boo, the Vatican don't want him to. They're competing with him, and he's a Christian. He's a devoted Catholic and Christian, and the Pope is competing with me, supporting rapists, murderers, brothel-running fucking mobsters from Wexford and Sinn Féin. I wonder why. Oh yeah, because he found familiarity. He found reflection in these people. He didn't find reflection in the sainted celibate, kind and caring, loving, neighbourly, humble little teaching, tutile amore, Francis, tutile amore. And where did that come off the face of the earth? Tutile. It's a very hard grade to achieve. I achieved this. It means loving and caring from the perspective of an angel. I got robbed, you know, they rob it off me. You know, Vandenbergs and Rockefellers and all these gypsies in the Rose World rob it. And because it's such a very high achievement, like, you know, the Masonic Book of Achievements, tutelage, they all get very religious towards the end. They stole it and they can do really, 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 really messed up and influential, powerful stuff using. I stopped studying for years, and I stopped being intelligent for years. My brain shriveled up because everything I did, they were exploiting it and utilizing it to be more powerful and terrible and corrupt. So I actually stopped studying and being intelligent. That was horrible. It was the worst time of my life. 2 or 3 years. So anyway, yeah, the Pope, the Vatican are crapper than you'll ever be. You know, the crappiest of the crap. Just because they committed in full-time effort to appeasing the Lord doesn't mean they're even pleasing to the Lord. They're just desperately and vainly and selfishly saving their own skin. Sorry, Bartholomew is sainted under a few different names. Bartholomew is one of them. He had a nasty event towards the end involving skin. All ahead of you, Francis. You know what I mean? So you deserve it. Yeah, so the Pope is barely tolerable to Jesus, and his gorgeous gown doesn't do him any favors because it's spiteful. Not really spiteful, but you know, he's a Christian Lord. Krishna Lord. You want to get on the Krishna side of him, and not really be invoking his somewhat sarcastic and spiteful. Yes, you did that to me, and yes, it'll be done to you for eternity, Francis. However you treat him, it will be treated onto you for eternity. So the fact that a Pope has to wear a gorgeous gown for eternity and be an absolute toe rag, it's because he deserves it. He's just another Joe Soap, just like you. He's not special in any sort of way. He deserves to suffer. The Vatican deserve to suffer what they've done. And the amount of people they've killed in the last 2,000 years, imitating and replicating Christ. Like the Pope kills. The Pope encourages priests to kill themselves on a regular basis so he can maintain a democratic power over some sort of Malthusian heaven in the stars. I was pretty sure this is the Starry Night Sky. So he has kids murdered and he has priests kill themselves in some sort of self-sacrificial. Stupid. It's not pleasing to the Lord anyway. Weird. I don't know, pleasing to Jesus and pleasing to Jesus. Being nice to women, I'm pretty sure is nice to women is pleasing to the Lord Jesus Christ. He spoke and taught with the women, and he wanted John to take care of his mother. This is hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. Oh, one more thing, just before I go, could you take care of my mother? Yeah, sure. No worries. That can't be too hard. So yeah. Yes, I know you don't pay for the taxes. Like Pope robs kids with angels, like he robbed Jesus and his orrery, and he probably robs you all the time. You all live in the Yellow Submarine. That's like when the Queen's taking care of you, or really high-to-do, important people. I heard the Pope does steal all your orreries and keeps them all locked away, like he's gardening the flock, or he's pruning the flock, and he keeps you all stupid and limited. All the time, it's like his job to keep you all stupid and limited, and walk you down. Whenever you walk up this like big holy mountain, he just walks you back down. He's like, yeah, you don't want to be up here. You don't want to be up here. I'm a tricksy little Italian. You come back down here. And he has to do this to Buddhists and stuff all the time, because Buddhists are always finding their way up there. And he just gets everybody down and keeps everybody limited and keeps everybody in veils of profanity that you wouldn't even know about. So, yeah, he actually works against Christ, you know what I mean? He's limiting you and keeping you profane and competitively so, you know what I mean? He's competitive for the respect of the Lord. And like I said, just because he makes it a full-time job doesn't mean he's even appeasing to the Lord. So he's nothing to be respected or appreciated. Or idolization is a really big problem. You know, I'm going to have it down to you. Idolization is a really massive... You're not even supposed to idolize Christ too much. You're just supposed to respect him as God's son. You're respecting the God capacity, the God component in him. And it's wrong to put Jesus even... Although it says that this is the Lord and the Lord will now be your God. And Jesus became the Lord, or one with the Lord of this world. You are still respecting in, or reflecting in Mr. Christ, a holiness of being an Israelite, a child of God, a star child. It's problematic to glorify and idolize him, or it's very problematic to glorify and idolize any man before God, or the Lord, more so. It's the Pope. He's very, very mistaken. This toe rag and this servant who's not even appeasing. He's just, again, necessarily, desperately needs to be constantly appeasing, because there's no amount of debt. There's no debt that can be repaid, you know, there's no amount. So he's not doing it for his Christian sake. He's not doing it for Christ. They're doing it for themselves. It's vain, and it's, you know, it's vain and selfish, self-allayment to be pleasing to the Lord. And like, he mocks himself loads all the time. Francis does on purpose to do this, like, yes, I'm stupid, yes, okay, I'm blah blah blah, yes. And it's pleasing, you know, but it's also self-mockery, self-revelation, not lying, being honest. They're the Antichrist symbol on their backs. Yeah, so you need to know this and appreciate it, because that's pleasing to the Lord, that you know the truth about that. It's pleasing to the Lord that, you know, that Rome aren't Christian or special. Rome assumed power over this temple of Christianity, which was a burning bush. And then they kept it as a burning bush, Babylonian burning bush, and then they realized true lordship, and then they still maintained a lot of control over the fact that it was true and free lordship under Jesus. But still, you know, they dominated it. So you need to know they're terrible people, and they're Christ killers, and they persecuted his family and all his friends and family, Rome, and semblantly have these practices now for their own self-preservation, and nothing to do with teach. They don't teach you anything. Like, all they do is just give you the gospel truth, and I'd even question a lot of the ritualism inherent in Christian. Like, for example, I'm an angel. Okay, I came to Earth. I'm an angel. And when I was in primary school, I was told prayers. The Lord's Prayer is a prayer. That's a pretty good prayer. That's a well-structured prayer. I was hearing this other prayer, and I remember I giggled. Like, I started laughing. I was like, blessed art thou amongst women. And when I heard that, I broke my shit laughing in the back. I was like, 3 or 4 years old. 4 or 5, 4 years old. A teacher that made a big thing. I was like, why did thou just laugh? Why did thou just laugh? And I couldn't really explain myself. I just thought it was hilarious. It's not really a prayer. It's a very, very, very sacred and personal greeting and blessing or bestowing upon the Christ, Mother of Christ. It's really weird that we recite it. It's got nothing to do with us. A lot more to do with women. That's probably why I'd laughed. It's not exactly a prayer. It's a very respectful greeting and blessing, an angel coming before Mary and greeting her and letting her know it's choice. It's weird the way we recite it. It's not a prayer. It's very sentimental and special and to Jesus and his family and his mother. I don't know why we utter it and repeat it. because it has an effect. It rings a bell, you know. A lot of your monkey Malthusian sodomistic world is just learning about things that have an effect. You know, you see this gypsy woman try to make Jim Morrison drink blood. And he's like, no, I don't want to. And she goes, oh, don't be such a baby. Come on. You know, it works. And she goes, it works. I was like, what do you mean it works? As a scientist, like, it has an effect. It does something. You get condemned. And I've explained this all through other videos. Condemning yourself has an effect, to the point where people go out and do things just because it has an effect. It's like, look, it's like her, it works. And self-condemning can have a really, really big effect. And people haplessly practice in self-condemning techniques all over the world. They have no idea. Or they ought to have an idea, like killing stuff. Thou shalt not kill. It's very simple. But they do it. And then they get a bit of holy attention, and there's a ramification, and it has an effect. And they think this is scientific. Or this. And it's so terrible. So you have to suffer stupidity. Is all we're suffering in the meantime. So yeah, the Pope's not real. Boo, Pope's not real. Pope's not real. Like, birds aren't real, you know? There's no truth about all of this. Fucking hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Birds aren't real. Absolutely total. He has such a devilish grin on his face. But in all fairness, like, it's everybody else. It is just coward. It is just cowardice. Absolute cowardice, anyway. Cow herd. Everybody moving like a one cow herd. That's what a cow herd is. Because one Frenchman turns around on the battlefield and runs away, and all the other Frenchmen copy him, and that's why they're called cowherds. Not the first man that ran. All the other people that copied him did exactly what the cowherd were doing. And they're French. That's where it comes from. So the French are very similar, you know, Christ-killing profanity and doing weird things to have an effect, like spitting on crucifixes and all this, and very French, isn't it? Spitting in general. Yeah, and they're much more semblant Christ killers as well. So, you know, everyone that's pretending to be holy and devout are really like the Antichrist, basically, what I'm saying. And they have no place to be dominating or telling you how to live your lives or what to do. The Pope can't say anything to you people. He's a Christ killer. If he talks to you about abortion or, oh, I don't like the lyrics in Christina Aguilera's new song, it's a little too saucy, it's like, Christ killer, shut your face. And this is like, get in line, Frankie. You know what I mean? And this is like, I kissed a girl and the Pope doesn't like it. Who cares? You're a Christ killer. It's like, shut your face, Frankie. I'm gonna down on your face, Frankie. Nothing you can do, Pope. Nothing you can do to ever amend what you did. Bonking his wife for 500 years into scarletry as well, Francis. So I'm gonna get a megaphone, Frankie, just to let you know. Or like a... So I had important business there that preceded you, Francis. And I could like stand outside the church, you know, and really let them know when they're all on their way to say the prayers to Derek Rockefeller. And the Pope doesn't care. And why doesn't the Pope care? Because he's fake. He's not really Pope. He doesn't care. He's not your shepherd. He wouldn't jump out and try to save you. You know, the only advice I got off that Brazilian prick was to break my own neck. He told me to break my neck. And so where did Kurt Cobain try to kill himself in Rome? You know, forever in debt to priceless advice. Kurt tried to kill himself in Rome. I imagine you wanted help, desperately, skits and tormented by neurae. And that's the advice you got off the fucking Christ-killing fucking Pope. Because that's the same advice, you know. And kill Christians. Yeah, kill Christian-killing gypsy. He doesn't believe in it. He's a devil worshipper or something. I like Bar Francis. He's some like Lord or devil worshipper anyway. I'm pretty sure I have it down to have that as granted. That the Pope is in somewhere gypsy belief, gypsy metaphysics. And we can never be certain in metaphysics, but he's actually very certain in his metaphysics. It's probably his job, isn't it? To be committed to a metaphysics. And he's wrong. Which is most likely what's going to be in the case of any metaphysics. You're most likely going to be wrong, Frankie. Unless you're me, you know, friends. It's not that I have the last word, Francis. It's that I am the word. And I will be all that's left. So yeah, get your shoe shiny, kid. No, yeah, I just wanted to let you know because it's important that everybody else knows because it's worrying and it's a bother to Jesus when you care for Pope Francis. I see people caring for Francis. Did you see the Pope Francis? Very blind and lame. A blind man had his eyesight returned to me when I was in a psychiatric inspection. I wasn't really care. And he had his eyesight returned to him. They didn't really observe that or make note of that. And he found a book with Pope Francis in it. And he's like, oh, it's so important to me that I get to see the Pope Francis. And I was like, yeah, buddy. I'm standing here right in front of you. The reason you have your eyes. Not the reason, but the reason your eyesight came back to you so you could see me. And I'm so happy to see Pope Francis. Oh, he's a Christ killer. Why do you fucking care about that heretic? Scrubbing his own back all day because he's so fucking dirty. Yeah, so you need to know the truth because it's pleasing and it's important to the Lord that you know the truth about that. That Rome are Christ killers. Babylonian gypsy merchants are Christ killers as well, and they're all over the place. Royalty are like Christ killers. It's very important to Jesus. Jesus can work for you a lot better, and that's what you want most. You want the Lord to be working with you, and then everything will go well in your world. You'll be very posh and abundant if the Lord's working with you. It has to be very posh and abundant, spiritually and contently, like. Nothing to do with like serpent flesh, money and God you doubt, but quite clearly. Yeah, so you want the Lord to be working, and it's very easy for the Lord to work with you when you know that the truth, as we learn with the Gospels, the truth about his story, and you learn the truth about it all. Yeah, it's just weird that the Vatican are the ones distributing it, as if like, they're somewhat responsible for it all, aren't they? And then they're suddenly trying to help. I don't really want your help, Frankie. The Swiss, just to kill me, the Swiss funded the Third Reich massively, aided, directed them, encouraged them, protected them. And then I saw some footage recently of them emptying out the death camp. I was trying to read into it a bit to see what I believed. And all these poxy jeeps come rolling in with a very blatantly haphazardly writ Switzerland, painted Switzerland on all the vans coming to rescue all the people in the death camps. This is like annoying to the Lord, because this is bullshit. Rolling in with, oh, we're the good guys, we're the liberators, we're gonna, like, the espionage and propaganda back then was, because there was no proper communications or thorough communications, saturated communications. The propaganda was insane back then, and I just cannot believe, retrospectively, looking back to Switzerland, rolled into the death camps and pretended to be saving everybody. I was like, oh, like, the crap, they're busted, they're in there, right? Well, let's just pretend to not know about it. Oh my God, this is a terrible thing. And they rolled in. The church are kind of pretending to help or care about Christianity because they're pretty fucked in respect of. And I can't believe the Swiss rolling in with Switzerland painted like really crappily, and like, just really quickly just painted on everything. Oh, just quickly, Switzerland. Oh yes, we're here to help and save and give first aid. And oh man, it's just, when I saw that I got so angry. Absolute shysters, like absolute shysters, man. Funded, encouraged them, directed them. Like, I reckon the only reason they really directed anything at Judaism was because it was global banking competition. It was like, you can't beat the Jews on banking because they were doing it a lot longer than you. And, Switzerland, centre of global banking. And they're like, yeah, well, we'll just wipe them all out. And it seemed like a lot of that long play. Like, I don't think Hitler even cared so much for genetics, but he'd realised how Z-Jews got so powerful, and they were just basically copying them. I know, like, white, there's nothing to do with white supremacy. Karl Marx was a big black gay Jew, like, and that was Germany's statement after the war. Nothing to do with being white or white supremacist or at all. Like, I'd say Hitler was going down to Africa and had his purity programmed for African people to be big, super healthy, and big black gay Jew, Karl Marx, spokesperson of the post-war Germany. Nothing to do with race, nothing to do with religion, and nothing to do with most things that you think it has anything to do about. Absolutely nothing to do with any of that. Getting the truth also on this matter is important for the world, because just like Jesus is unrepresented, or there's no truth, and you can rest in peace with truth, I think a lot of Geist and spirit remains in this world for young men to get out there and get enthused by the events of World War II or the components of World War II, because the truth is not told. It was a massive, big, horrible cover-up and corruption, and they could say whatever they wanted after the war. And, there's a lot of misrepresentation, a lot of fallacy and fact. And I reckon that's why the spirit lives on in young men, and they can't explain it, they don't understand it. They get up and they do all silly, all that crap. They don't understand it. Oh, my family's coming in. Chris Killer Pope. Hello.
Hi.